Welcome to All Things AI. My name is Ishan, and in the fifth episode, we have Mr. Vivek Natarajan, an AI researcher at Google and the mastermind behind Med-PaLM 2, a monumental advance in the development of LLMs and the expansion of AI into healthcare. Welcome to the channel, and it's an honor to have you here today.
Thanks so much for having me here, Ishan. Looking forward to the conversation.
I'll just start off by asking, how's your day going today?
Um, Pretty good. I would say, earlier in the morning over here. So, yeah.
And so I want to dedicate the first portion of today's interview to Med-PaLM 2. And so exactly what does Med-PaLM 2 do?
Sure. So, MedPalm 2 or MedPalm itself, these are large language models that have been designed for applications in the medical domain. And The reason for doing that is, I mean, we've been in our team working on medical AI for several years now. And I think in 2022, we were looking at all the fantastic advances in foundation models and large language models, such as GPT-3, Palm, and Gopher, and several others. Um, and so we wanted to ensure that these models, given their remarkable potential, could be translated to applications in biomedicine as fast as possible. But then one of the things that we realized was that uh, the medical domain, the biomedical domain, is very unique. The data that you bring in has a lot of different characteristics compared to the typical language that you see in large language models or images that you see on the internet. So you need a layer of specialization. But then the question was where to start. And so for us, it made a lot of intuitive sense to start on top of the existing large language models, such as Palm. And the reason for doing that is these models, when you are training them on the internet, on large scale data, they become very strong intelligence substrates. And by that, what I mean is just because of doing that task at scale, they become very knowledgeable about not just the English language and its syntax and semantics, but also learn about medicine and biology and law and beyond. So they are very good conversationalists and good to have like a dialogue with. So in many ways, they're like your very smart friend who is knowledgeable about a broad range of topics, right? But if you want medical advice or if you have a medical concern, would you go to your smart friend? You wouldn't, right? You would go to a licensed medical practitioner. You would go to a doctor. And so it's kind of the same thing. We wanted to train models that have been specialized and adapted to the requirements of the medical domain. And so the tagline of the project that we had internally, we called it AI sent to medical school. And that's what we were trying over here. Essentially, take these models uh, and give them a lot of high quality medical data that spans everything from biology, medicinal chemistry, genetics, all the way up to clinical information, medical imaging, population health, and beyond. A lot of high quality medical tokens, so that they better understand biology and medicine. And after that, you can specialize them further through real world interactions, just like you would have like in a medical residency phase or like a fellowship phase for medical trainees and medical students. So that's what we're trying to do, and so that is why we have this model that's called Med-PaLM. It's built on top of Palm, which is Google's version of GPT-3, if you want to call it. But it has been specialized and adapted and aligned for the requirements of the medical domain, so that you can use it very specifically.
And so I think I was watching a video, might have been on the Google Research YouTube channel, I think, and it was dedicated towards the USMLE, right? Like the medical licensing exam.
Mhm.
And then I guess that kind of explains why you were saying it's geared towards like genetics and biology, everything that would possibly come up, if I'm correct. So in the near future, how do you see MedPalm positively influencing like the USMLE specifically?
Um, I think that part I am not particularly sure. In many ways, I think medical question answering has been a grand research challenge for several decades, and so there have been very established and esteemed researchers at MIT, Stanford, and beyond who've been trying to tackle this problem for several decades. And the reason for that is quite simple. A, the problem is very challenging, and B, if you get it right, you can have a lot of impact in the world. But I think the USMLE has been designed for humans and for medical trainees, but it has not been trained for AI in particular. So I think it's not very useful to think about like the kind of intelligence that you have in AI systems as the same as human intelligence. And so the benchmarks that we need to design for AI, I think, should be different from what we have for humans. And typically for humans, we have all these tests, whether that's the bar exam, whether that's the USMLE. And it's interesting and it's useful to know that these systems have, encoded useful knowledge that they can crack these exams or answer questions that are given in these exams to a high degree of accuracy. But it, I think, doesn't really tell a lot about their real world utility and may not be the best measure of their utility and what sort of real world applications they may be useful for. So yeah, in that sense, I would say, I mean, it's an interesting result, but that was not the key motivation for our work in general as well. I mean, we are more interested in applications of these systems where we can have real impact in real world clinical applications and workflows. Um,
Yeah.
but maybe one quick thing I would state is it's clear that these systems can be very strong uh, aids for education. So helping medical students or people who are preparing for exams answer different kinds of questions. And so they may help scale personalized educations better. And so, but that's a different topic, I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess moving on, I guess to the next steps for the development of MedPalm 2, like I think it was from that same video I saw, I'm pretty sure it was clinical trials or not like personalized medical records and things like that that could potentially be expanded to. And so what do you think are the next steps for the development of MedPalm 2?
Um, so I think since MedPalm, we've had another uh, paper where we expanded the capabilities of MedPalm to multimodal data, multimodal biomedical data. And the reason for that is, again, kind of simple. Medicine, the practice of medicine is inherently multimodal in nature. So doctors are routinely interpreting, you know, data from a bunch of different modalities. They're conversing with patients and care providers in clinical language and natural language, but they're looking at like health records, they're looking at medical images, they're looking at lab tests, and increasingly we are seeing new modalities come in which are having higher resolution, such as, for example, genomics data because of the cost of genomic sequencing rapidly going down. So you want the AI systems to also be inherently multimodal so that they can make best use of all the data and then help in a manner that is contextualized to the given individual or the given patient in that setting. And so that's what we've been building towards. And so with MedPaLM multimodal, we had the first demonstration of a generalist biomedical AI agent. By that, I mean like a single model that with the same set of weights, with the same set of parameters, can encode and interpret a wide range of biomedical data modalities. And these include language, medical images, genomics data, EHR data. And then the same model can solve a wide range of biomedical tasks to a high degree of accuracy. And so we showed with that paper that, yeah, you could build such systems. They are no longer like science fiction or like, pipe dreams. And so the next step is to keep improving our multimodal AI systems in general. Um, and I would say the maybe for me personally, the dream is to build an AI doctor. And so if you think about what you need to build an AI doctor, then you want uh, to have the system be very good at dialogue and conversations. It should be very good at medical diagnosis, coming up with treatment plans, coming up with recommendations for therapy and beyond. But then it also needs to be able to like interpret multimodal medical data. It should be able to provide safe and grounded answers. It should be able to do good evidence review and synthesis and systematic reviews, and it should be safe above all. So there's so many of these challenges, but that's kind of the dream and goal over here. And so we are like tackling all of them together over the next in all our research projects and milestones.
And I'll just like generally ask this, I guess looking in on like an AI doctor, and because there's been like a lot of talk about like the clinical, like actually applying, because there is some real world AI, I guess, but like there's like much more in testing, obviously, than there is that's actually applied. So how far do you think we are from actually seeing like something like a medical, I guess, like I guess like a diagnosis or something like that that can be applied in the real world?
Um, so today there have been several models that have like from a bunch of different both from academia and industry that have received FDA and other regulatory agencies approvals for different kinds of diagnostic applications, and they tend to be primarily in the medical imaging space. And the reason for that is if you look at the history of medical AI, a lot of the models before transformers and large language models came through were supervised machine learning models that and if you look at supervised machine learning in general, among the different fields, the most advanced was computer vision. We had probably the best networks with the best inductive biases. But then the other thing with supervised machine learning is you actually need a lot of data. But turns out that in medical imaging, you have a lot of high quality data with a lot of labels from expert clinicians and radiologists or whoever is in the loop. So that helped help people build these systems that were kind of reliable, and you could verify and validate them, and then the regulators felt comfortable enough to give approvals. But these were also relatively narrow systems, right? I mean, so they've been designed to do only one kind of thing, one task. So if you have a model for radiology, say something like detecting breast cancer from mammograms, that system would only be able to do that. It would basically take an image and tell you the probability of a breast cancer. That's it. You cannot question it anymore. You cannot ask why it came up with that. It's a point solution. So while they were useful and they've been integrated in, I would say, several hospitals around the world in different clinical workflows and settings, they are also fundamentally limited as tools. And so because of that, there has been a limitation of uptake of the previous generation of medical AI models generally. But I think with large language models and generative AI in general, everyone can see the potential of like having agents that can do a wide variety of tasks to a high degree of accuracy with a single model, with a single system that you can also like have a conversation with or give a feedback, and so on and so forth. And so that's why this time, instead of like us researchers or people who are building these systems trying to sell it to people on the other side, which are the doctors or the execs running hospitals, this time the pull has been from the other side, where for example, the biggest healthcare providers and the life science companies, they want to use these systems. And so that is exciting because it feels fundamentally different, and everyone can see the potential and value of these technology this time around. With I'm talking specifically about generative AI. But it is also important that as you have models with increasing capabilities, you need to be able to understand them comprehensively and to like develop them responsibly and also deploy them safely. And so that is the key work that needs to happen. But this time it feels like everyone is excited and everyone's pulling together because the potential of these technologies is just immense.
For sure. The next portion of today's interview is going to be about like the expansion of AI in medicine. And so we've seen like a lot of application and like biomedical researchers focusing in on AI. So my first question to you is how can the interdisciplinary collaboration between AI experts and medical researchers be facilitated to like maximize the potential of AI in healthcare? Or I guess in other words, can we incorporate like any more practices, I guess, that would be beneficial to developing AI?
Um, sure. I think for me, and based on my experience at Google, developing medical AI or biomedical AI systems, it's an intensely multidisciplinary endeavor. And so if you look at most of my research papers or publications or things that I've worked on, my co-conspirator, if I could say that, or colleague or mentor, is Dr. Alan Carty, who's based in London. And he is a practicing cardiovascular surgeon and has 2 decades of experience. Also has experience in academia. Was a faculty at Harvard, and so You need people who can not only talk in the language of AI or understand AI, but also people who can converse and talk in the language of medicine and biology. And then you need the vocabularies of people from both sides to merge. And then once you start doing that, you can the development process becomes I think more streamlined and exciting. And but it is important that you have as many different voices from both the clinical medicine side as well as the AI research side coming together and working collaboratively over here. And so, concretely, in terms of the research problems or the products that we build, it's almost always driven by what is the unmet need in medicine today that we can tackle with the AI systems that we can, which we have already developed or can potentially develop. And that also involves asking questions around like how do we measure progress, what are the metrics that we optimize for, and how do we optimize these metrics in a manner that are most aligned with the values of the practice of medicine or for patients in general, and benefit them. And so all these questions require people who have broad clinical expertise, who have gone through medical school, who have actually been in these hospitals or in these operation theaters or in these surgery rooms, or who have done field work. So it is an intensely multidisciplinary endeavor. And that's true not just for the clinical medicine side, but also for the biology or the life sciences side, where you need people who have wet lab expertise, who understand, for example, if you're working on structural biology problems like AlphaFold, who have actually deep experience of working on the previous generation of models or solutions, so that they can bring in that expertise in terms of like data collection or metrics again, to help build these systems faster and optimize them faster. So again, deep multidisciplinary expertise, and we need everyone if you want to make progress or property over here.
And so I guess same realm, something that I've actually struggled with when I was doing my own like research is having enough data, because especially when you're like an independent researcher, that's one of the biggest problems is just having like a sheer amount of data. And so I guess at Google, obviously there's way more resources than if you were an independent researcher. But did you and your team ever have any problem with, I guess, not having enough data?
Um, yeah, constantly, because again, Google is not a healthcare or life sciences company, so we don't generate or we don't have access to in-house clinical or biology data sets that are large scale. So we constantly have to again collaborate with partners to get hold of the right kind of data, or innovate on approaches that are more data efficient, or can learn from fewer number of examples or fewer number of demonstrations. So I mean that's constantly a challenge, but I think that's a good constraint in general as well, because when you have constraints, I think you can also they are good motivations for improving on algorithms that are more data efficient. And that is good for everyone in general, because if you can develop AI systems that can learn from smaller number of examples, then that's great, because the development time is reduced, and yeah, and you can possibly design and deploy them faster. So I think it's a good constraint to have, but again, that's a challenge that we also constantly face, and that is for good reason, because medical data is highly sensitive in nature, and there are a lot of regulations and rules and processes around privacy that you need to follow, and all this is for good reason. And so we can't go around that, but rather we have to incorporate those constraints in the model development process, and either in and innovate appropriately, whether that's directly in the model development approaches or in terms of like partnerships and collaborations that we work with.
Um, the next thing I wanted to look at was like the clinical trial process. And I guess, especially for like medical drugs, it can take like years or even a decade if it's because obviously these need to be safe if people are going to be using them. And so, on that note, I've seen some research papers where people used AI to model like polymer interactions, and then through that, actually find that this drug is effective or this drug isn't effective. So, do you think AI can effectively be utilized in the clinical trial process for efficiency?
Yeah, I think so. to me, AI is kind of like the latest generation of models that we have. They are like so generally powerful and capable that I think their applications are limited, and so it just comes down to the creativity of the people in the loop and them having access to the right kind of technologies that they can effectively use AI and models such as MedPaLM or GPT-4 or whatever. Again, in the clinical trial realms, again, a lot of different opportunities. I think one of the biggest challenges are in terms of recruiting the right kind of people into these clinical trials at the right phase of development of a given disease, so that the drug and development can be the most effective for them. And we've historically struggled with that because, again, data regarding all these patients or people are distributed across silos and they're multimodal in nature. And doctors either do not have enough time or do not have the expertise to understand that data to be able to get to the right cohorts. But AI can help with that. This is kind of like a needle in the haystack problem, and AI is very good at being able to go through all that data and pick the right set of people or cohorts that you need to target over here. And so in that sense, I think it can greatly improve the efficiency of the trial recruitment process, get the right people in front of the drug, and help with those kind of things. And then again, broadly in the drug discovery pipeline, a lot of different applications, directly from designing these medicines, these sequence medicines, all the way up to applications such as figuring out, taking in the patient context, and figuring out whether a given drug might be fit for repurposing, and also a lot of different applications in terms of validating the drugs as well. So making very high quality predictions on the efficacy of a given drug, whether it would work or what sort of drugs could be repurposed, as well as who are the right people that you should apply a given drug to in a given trial, and also coming up with strong predictors of results of what happens when you intervene. I think that is what AI is going to be very broadly good at. And so if I abstract and take a step back and say, I think it's basically these models are becoming so powerful and so good, especially as we introduce richer and richer biomedical data across the whole biomedical stack or universe. I think they're going to increasingly become very strong models of human biology. And if you think of biology as like a process in this n-dimensional universe, then these models are going to tell us exactly what's going to happen, and especially what happens when you intervene with specific drugs or therapies for individual patients. And so that's what we are building towards.
And so with that, I guess I want to move into the transition to today's final portion, which is just going to be advice for young innovators. And so you've worked in AI for quite a while, and you've spearheaded the development of MedPaLM. So I just want to take the last few minutes to discuss opportunities in AI for young innovators who are interested in getting involved in the field. And so what part of AI initially fascinated you to start working with it?
Yeah, sure. So for me, it was so I grew up in India, and uh, in some of the nearby towns and villages that I was growing up in, access to healthcare was a big challenge. So people sometimes had to walk 30, 40 miles in extreme heat, or give up a day's wages or go without food just to see a doctor. And so I kind of knew people who had not seen a doctor in their entire lifetime. And so that root problem of access to healthcare was something that I always wanted to do something about. It bothered me a lot that just to get access to medical expertise, people had to struggle so much. And so even in my undergrad, I was working on an app called Ask the Doctor Anytime Anywhere that was bootstrapped using a lot of old school machine learning technologies and rules and expert system kind of approaches. I think AI itself or machine learning itself was not quite ready for such applications back then. But that problem has stayed with me in general. And yeah, and I've been very fortunate that I kind of got out of school back in 2014 and got the opportunity to be like one of the early engineers at Facebook AI Research just when the lab was being set up, to be at in the ground zero of the AI revolution, if you were to put it that way. And but it was very clear even a few years into the deep learning era that this technology was obviously working. we were not only like smashing research benchmarks in problems such as speech recognition, natural language processing, computer vision, but we were also like lifting key business metrics in places such as ads or newsfeed or enabling magical new experiences. And so it was clear it was working. And then around 2018, I had again the good fortune of running into Greg Corrado, who was the co-founder of Google Brain and currently heads all health AI research at Google. And he mentioned that they're putting together this team of people coming together from DeepMind and Google Brain again to tackle medical AI in general. And he gave me the opportunity to come over, and so that's when I decided I should go back to this root node problem because that's something I always cared about, like access to healthcare. And I'm kind of very delighted to say that I think the arc of progress in AI and LLMs in particular over the last 1 year. It allows us to dream of this future where you can put like world-class medical expertise at the fingertip of billions of people worldwide. Put a world-class doctor in the pocket of billions of people worldwide. That is no longer science fiction. It will take us a few more years, but I am very, very optimistic that we can get over there. And so, yeah, I mean that's kind of my motivation. I mean, it's been a very long-winded path, not always like a straight line, but I'm very glad to be working on the kind of things that I always wanted to work on.
And so the final question I have for you is to anyone struggling in the process, I guess just ranging from like struggling to learn how to code to understanding AI itself, what resources do you think, or any like best words of encouragement do you think would be beneficial for them?
Um, yeah, I would say like a few things over here, right? I think if you look at just how uh, you know open the AI community is, I think till date you can say that it's remarkable. Every time there is like a research breakthrough, it's immediately on archive. Code is often published. There are all these tutorials, these frameworks that help you very quickly bootstrap a system. Obviously, you can't train like giant models and everything, but for you to understand the basics, all the resources are at your fingertips. And I would encourage anyone who has like interest in AI to actually just focus on the fingertips and so sorry on the basics. And again, that comes down for me again. Like if I were to tell you on my table right now, I have three textbooks, and like if you are able to understand the fundamentals of AI, that will I think leave you in a very good state because those fundamentals are never going to change, even though we have like new classes of models and everything. The fundamentals of communication, the computation, the fundamentals of machine learning, the fundamentals of like the optimization approaches, I think those will always stay constant. And so, like having a very good grasp of them is, I think, essential. And then the second thing is being willing to like code and experiment and iterate, and like it's okay if it doesn't work the first time or if it doesn't work the first 100 times, you will eventually crack it. But the key thing is always like resilience and persistence, and like keep building, keep tinkering, like keep having these toy projects where you're trying to do useful and interesting things or learning in general, and I think that will again like accelerate the process of learning. And then the third thing is again finding like a community of like-minded people who are again interested. I think these days the AI community is huge. Everywhere there's a broad interest in AI, especially in applications in areas such as climate or biomedicine. And so like finding like-minded people who are in the same age group or like mentors who have the time to talk and walk you through sometimes if needed, is also going to be I think very, very helpful. So I think it comes down to those three things, like learning the basics really, really well, going through rich the textbooks that we have that have been written. I think those basics are never going to change. Then the second thing is being persistent and always tinkering and building, and keep doing that. And then the third thing is finding a community, both of like like-minded people and also of like mentors who'll be able to like help you.
And that's all for today. So thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
And with that being said, for anyone watching this, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment below.